Hi everyone, welcome to In the Metal. If you're new to us, In the Metal is a show that goes behind the dial and looks at the world of independent watchmaking. Independent watchmaking is a profession that encompasses so many facets, so many skills to create modern watches, and mostly using traditional tools, techniques, and applying handcrafted skills that have been handed down across literally centuries. So we have been lucky enough over the last 3+ months or so to interview and speak with, in a very informal setting, some of the absolute great names of independent watchmaking. We don't always hear those names because they're quite often working behind the scenes, but what they do is pretty intense engineering, and we liken it to heavy metal because that is what these guys are working on. Some using lathes and tools and that there. And the reason that we compare it to heavy metal is because I am joined each week by a guy who really needs no introduction. However, I'll introduce him anyway. He is a guy who in former career was lead guitar, 6-string shredder, 30 million album sales, 3 times Grammy nominated with Anthrax, kings of trash rock, pioneers of their time, Mr. Dan Spitz. I would like to welcome you now, Dan, and let people know while you're joining us that US master watchmaker, championing the independent watch sector in the United States, and on your way to producing the first fully in-house haute horologerie independent watch. So, hey Dan, how the hell are you?
What's going on, my little Irish furry friend?
Thanks a fucking million, man. Oh, I'm not allowed to swear anymore because we get pointing YouTube or heaven. So, I have to be on my best behavior. And plus, we have a doctor in the house tonight as well.
Yeah, so you could list all my credentials, and it's like a little minute little thimble full of crap. And then I got somebody. I wrote it on my Instagram because that's what really hit me really fast was that Rebecca is the first legalized master watchmaker that can wear our white coats and say, so I'm a doctor. I get to wear a white coat because I'm the only one that can legally do it. All of you have to take off your coats now.
Amazing. Yeah, Dan, absolutely, man. So we may get straight into this here because who we're about to introduce is Dr. Rebecca Struthers and her husband, Craig. This is a husband and wife team, master watchmakers, and Rebecca is also a historian, a PhD doctorate in horology. She is a watchmaker and soon an author as well. So
wait, because I want to say a few things before they come on.
Okay,
I've been following both of them for a long time on social media because they're traditional, real watchmakers, and Craig himself is a master watchmaker. I know there's a lot of focus on Rebecca all the time, but it's a team. They're married. It's a team, and what they're doing and where they started and where they got to and how they're representing their country is what's most important to me because I'm trying to do something similar for my country here. And it's an incredible story that we're going to get into. And they're 2 badass watchmakers who really they're getting it done. They got it done, and it's such an interesting story to see traditional watchmaking at work now. Here before your eyes, you're seeing them manufacture their own caliber now with machines. They're dating back to the 1700s, sitting on their benches, completely restored. So it's for a watchmaker. They're the watchmaker's watchmaker.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we're going to be looking at what they've been doing. Their movement has got a fantastic secret agent name, Project 248. So we're looking forward to finding out a little bit about that. But so I thought we could do worse than invite them in and say hello and go over to Birmingham, I think, in the United Kingdom, and say welcome to Craig and Rebecca.
Hey.
Good evening.
Hey guys.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Nice to finally meet you in virtual person.
Yeah, after the lovely introduction as well. Although I'm wearing a blue boiler suit at the moment rather than a lab coat, so I don't know. Does that help?
This is the first time we've had a couple on, and both of them being masters at what they do. So it's going to be it's intriguing for me. I find it fascinating that the two of you can work together so wonderfully and not kill each other every Thursday on a normal basis. Because watchmaking it's not like you two are wrenching cars and engines and you could just scream at each other at all times. It's a very quiet kind of workspace, and one person screams at another person, you might wreck whatever you were working on. So I don't know how you guys get that done, but we all want to bow to you and say, God bless you both, man.
Thank you. We do all right. I think we find watchmaking is such almost like a meditative experience that you're so in your own zone that you can work within feet of each other for a whole day and barely exchange a word. And before you know it, a day is gone. And
you haven't spoken to each other all day.
Yeah, you've forgotten that you're there.
So I was going to ask you two, what the secret is, how you can spend 24 hours a day with each other and all that. But I think you just said it. We don't talk to each other.
I suppose, in a really cheesy way.
I mean, it does get heated occasionally, but
Yeah, we get stressed sometimes, but we have really opposite skill sets, don't we? So we're never trying to do the same thing at the same time, and I think that really helps. If we were trying to have different ways of doing what we wanted.
So you two, where did you meet? Did you meet in school, in watchmaking school or jewelry school?
We met at we met at the School of Jewelry
in Birmingham.
And Rebecca was studying jewelry and watchmaking. And I was just studying watchmaking, but that's where we met initially.
That's just awesome. It's just absolutely awesome, because I find it fascinating, because what we do, we spend so much time doing what we do, because there is a never-ending learning curve, or even when we find our avenue and our path, which it seems you guys are on a very nice long path, and you finally found some steadiness in where you're going. But early on, we really don't know. Most of us don't know exactly what direction we're going to be going in. For me, I just was fascinated with complications, because I had tackled the basis of watchmaking, because I'm third generation kind of thing. But once I reached that plateau, then that shifts, and now I'm doing my dream, like you guys, and creating my own caliber. So I love that you guys finally fell into each other and fell into what you're doing now, in a steady path of making masterpieces that's forthcoming, that we'll get into and we'll talk about. Nevertheless, all the degrees and accomplishments the two of you have done is somebody. If you're watching this, you need to go on to strutherswatchmakers.com and have a look at the background of both these incredible watchmakers and see their accomplishments for yourself and their work, because it's incredible. Saying all that, and I'm going to keep going here just for a minute. I said all that because someone asked me a question in an interview that I did just recently, and they said, well, it's all about your watchmaking, your music, and that's all cool and all that. So tell us about your hobbies. What do you do? And I just stood there and I'm like, what I do is my hobby? And they're like, no, like, what do you do? Like, Saturday, Sunday. I'm like, no. I started thinking, like, wait, I don't have any hobbies. Because we're so engulfed and in love. It's not a job. Most people don't understand that. It really isn't a job. It's a passion that goes beyond passion.
Yeah.
No, that's an interesting point. I thought that myself recently, that I should have something else I'm doing otherwise. Like, we've got projects in the garage and stuff we're never going to do, because you spend all your time or spare time on the bench, and I think we feel guilty if we're doing something else, which is a bit strange, but because everything takes so long, doesn't it?
Yeah, and when you love what you do as well, it doesn't feel like working. So you kind of think, oh, I should have a hobby, but then my job is my hobby and my hobby is my job. So it kind of, yeah, really lucky like that, I think.
Yeah, so we're all kind of weird the same way, I think. So I don't feel so bad anymore. I felt bad for a couple of days. Like, wait, maybe I should take up a hobby like bicycle riding or something. And then I'm like, nah, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Then I couldn't restore this other machine or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
It's strange. It's a weird thing. I think because sometimes you could do too much as well, and you have to have a cut-off point. Otherwise, you get I don't know what's the word.
Would you go mad? I don't know.
Yeah, you would go mad.
It's also a diverse career, isn't it? Maybe that's part of it as well, because you do get to do things like we were saying earlier about illustration. You do get to do drawing and artwork and design as well as practical making. You have to restore your tools, so it is quite unresearched, a lot of research and history. So you do. Yeah. It doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing for a very long time because there is quite a lot to it. Maybe that's part of it.
Right. It's like it's a perpetual journey. I guess probably the best way we could explain it to other people, possibly collectors, is if they play golf. Imagine that they could quit everything that they do and be a golf instructor or own a golf course. That's their goal. What would be your hobby? Your hobby would be what you're doing, with your golf. You're passionate about your golf and your game and the clubs, and you'd be designing clubs, custom clubs, or whatever it may be. That's what we do. It's really not a job to us. It's a love and it's a passion. So what I'd like to get into is on that note is your backgrounds. We know by reading a lot about you guys that you really did pursue both being working with gold and platinum and working old school traditional ways, and that's the way you're trained, and you continued that on. You didn't fall into the I have to have everything modern in my workshop kind of thing that's going on here. And so if you could talk a little bit about that, about your traditional tools and the restoration of the machines and the avenues that help to bring about the backbone and persona of your business.
I think some of it is probably previous to watchmaking. I managed to bluff my way through an IT career, and I was terrible at it. So I think watchmaking to me was probably the complete opposite, and maybe Rebecca's obviously very frustrated that I'm useless on a computer.
It is remarkable. I don't know how, what was it, 50 years in IT and you don't know how to check your emails? It's incredible. I
know. I don't know how I lasted that long, but there came a point when it was time to get out, which I did, obviously.
Before you got found out.
Before I got found out, yeah. But,
that's great.
I think, I don't know. The old machines, technology is fantastic, and sometimes it would be really nice to have some super techie modern machines, but I just wouldn't know. I wouldn't know what to do with it, and I suppose I'm really old-fashioned and old school, and an old machine with a belt and a motor that smells of oil maybe I feel more connected to it than the computer. Well, we do use computers. We have a Mac and we design dials on them, so.
Yeah, so weirdly, it's kind of started out necessity. It wasn't a plan. A lot of what we've done has ended up just being us adapting to whatever's thrown at us. And when we first started out, we started with such a small business loan. We couldn't have even bought a new lathe. So everything we bought was secondhand stuff, looking on, I'm allowed to say eBay? Other auction sites are available. And just getting things off people's shed and garage floors that are usually really rusty and covered in old oil, and having to restore them because we just couldn't afford anything else. But it kind of ended up forming such a beautiful part of the way we work, and kind of adapting and sometimes kind of creating new tools out of old ones to do the things that we want doing, that like they're part of our inanimate workforce now. And we give them names, and we wouldn't change it. And now as we grow and we could change it, we're at the point now where we just still like getting old weird tools and restoring them in our living room.
That's because the machines they created for us watchmakers way back when are each in their own right works of art. They're beauty. They're not just a square piece of machinery that's made today. It's art, and besides that, they're so precise. Hundreds of years later, as you know, because you guys have restored so many machines for your own shop. Sometimes it really baffles my mind, you know, because I spent 3 years here nonstop restoring the machines to set up this business, and to really bring them back to life and know that they're within, you know, a few microns of concentricity blows my mind when I'm looking at a machine that's maybe 90 years old and it's been used, and it's the beauty of it, and it is the belt, you know, the noise, the sound, especially if we're trained that way.
While we're talking about tools here, do you want to have a look at a few of these amazing old pieces of
absolutely
equipment that usually we take a little bit longer to get to the images, but why the hell not? We're talking about the tools now. And but before I do that, we were talking about how you're working. It's a full-time hobby as well as a profession. But I find that it's a constant journey of discovery. And when you're manufacturing, when you're making something, or when you're crafting something with your hands, it really does not seem like it's particularly when you're doing it for yourself. It doesn't seem like it's work. I can understand that. And listening to what you were talking about last night, which we will come back to as well, there's so much to learn that it's like an education as much as it is a job, as much as it is a pastime, as much as it is a profession. And fantastic. So sorry, I've gone off track there again. I'm prone to do that. But so we wanted to look at a couple of the old tools. We have Albert, Barney. Anybody you'd like to introduce first of all, guys, or
Barney?
See who comes up. We got
There's
Barney.
Barney.
Yeah, that's our 10mm case making lathe. Barney is actually named after someone. Most of our machines are kind of part named after someone. Yeah. Barney, actually, it was an eBay purchase, that one. And the eBay handle name of the guy was Barney the Whippet. So we were really excited because we love dogs. And we were so excited to meet Barney the Whippet. And when we arrived, and we kind of, you know, knocked on the door, really excited, where's the dog? And asked where Barney was. It turned out he'd passed away not that long beforehand.
Bummer.
Very sad. So we've named our lathe in his memory. So this is Barney's lathe after Barney the Whippet. Lives on in our work.
What age is the lathe?
It's a Pultra.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not a particularly expensive lathe on any level. Or I mean, it's a good old piece of machinery that basically we use just for case making. As you can see, there's boxwood chucks next to it. It's a nice way to hold bezels and case backs without damaging them. So if you put them in a metal chuck, there's a risk of marking the inside or distorting them. Whereas boxwood is a really lovely way of turning soft metal without damaging it.
For perhaps for collectors who are watching now and don't understand what's going on, Rebecca and Craig, they craft their own solid gold and cases for their timepieces by hand, the old traditional way, and they're using this lathe, which is, if I remember, this is just like a Shablin 70, I think, right? 70 height, Pultra, and these were actually this was kind of their answer to the Shablin 70, and it is a precise a lathe that was a lot of people are using now, and a lot of people are finding out about it now. Let's say they were made, but they're hard to find still in good condition because I think people really did abuse them a lot. Yeah, I think a lot of them that you do find are absolutely raked. This is a reasonable one, so we were quite lucky. But yeah, you're right. A lot of them have had a rough life. Well, I mean, they're old, aren't they? They're jobbing lathes, a lot of them too. So they were just used for absolutely everything. A lot of model engineers and stuff used them. Making steam trains. Yeah, I was actually looking at getting one for here, but the ones I was seeing, they were missing too many parts, and I couldn't find what I needed to even buy 2 or 3 of them. Yeah, they're really. But you guys are right there, so you got the eBay UK, and I'm sure you're able to we're able to snag a really good one. So for those who don't know, Pulsar is a kick-ass lathe. It is super accurate and can be used for way more stuff than just case making. It is really, if you can't find a good Shalvin 70, it definitely is a substitute. If you can find a good one, or rebuild it correctly.
Yeah,
definitely.
What about Albert then?
Yeah.
Albert, I think we used to have a BCA milling machine that I found it was useful, but it was quite big. Ever since I saw one of these, even though a lot of them are sort of around turn of the century, last century, aren't they? But
wow,
they're incredible. The quality and the way they work, and they're just beautiful things. And we managed to find one again on that said auction site. It's the only place I can find things. And this, and also
George came together, didn't they? Because Albert's well over 100 years old now. And that's George, IME, Joel. So Albert's German and George is British, hence the names. Good classic German and British names there. But yeah, use them for general.
They are beautiful though. They're elegant.
So go back one picture, Johnny. Yeah, so you could tell people what kind of German machine this is, so they know.
Wolfgang.
Wolfgang.
Yeah.
Okay, so for people who are collectors and want to know more about the tools and the old machinery that we use that is so precise and so beautiful, Wolfgang is also. I have some of their milling machines here that I use on my Levin for cutting gears. They were kind of in a fight with, let's say, with Bowley, and they made some of the most precise machines known to mankind before light was invented. And as you can see, they're still going strong today and doing the precision that we need. That just about every CNC machine that you would normally see when in your whereabouts that's outside of Switzerland is not as precise as what you're looking at here. This is actually more precise. So and you guys restored that, and who's helping you guys do the metal work and the stands and that kind of stuff for these machines?
They already came on the stands. They were just in really bad condition, like covered in different colours of paint and chipped, and bits of old bolts rusted in there. But
a lot of old oil.
Yeah, that one was a good find. To find it with all the accessories and all that. Wow, that's incredible. They had to come out of a factory somewhere or something, I imagine.
We don't know. It actually came from a garage near the Scottish border. Where do we find things? With George. So obviously whoever had them originally was into his small engineering, whatever he did.
So you guys are using that as your jig borer, basically.
Yeah, the little drawer underneath, the tools in there we don't use. They came with it, but they're all original. I just thought it'd be a shame to separate them. Yeah. So I just keep them inside because they're all part of the machine, aren't they? And maybe one of them I will use one day, but they're more sort of clockmaking size.
Large, too big.
Yeah, that machine was made before there was even wristwatches, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And you guys, for using that as a jig borer, and you haven't modernized it at all by putting like a DRO, a digital readout. For those who don't know what that is, like what's behind me here. We by putting those on a machine, we get to see visually down to 1 micron of say how deep we want to drill a hole or whatever we want to do in a machine such as that. In the olden days, there's little spinning little round discs on the end of the little wheels that you see there, and that will tell us how deep we go. But now we can be a little bit more repeatable and precise because the machine wears, and the DRO takes away that if a machine is old and it's worn, it'll still retract back to the exact digital readout that we can see no matter what. I mean, you guys aren't using those, which is total old school and beautiful.
Too dyslexic to use anything.
It's like when you're in watchmaking school, when we're forced to work as the two of you are working, and it's a lovely thing. And some of us retreat backwards to what you're doing because we're not in a rush to make many pieces. It's just about the art, and these machines can get it done if you know how to use them correctly. And you guys it's just fascinating to see. Now, wait a minute, the second machine, wasn't that, did you change the name on that? Because I know me and you goofed on that you named one of your machines Spitz Mouse.
That's our uprighting tool. So you've got George Bear's IME drill, and Spitz Mouse is an uprighting tool that's converted from an 6 millimeter.
6 millimeter launch lathe.
Yeah.
Yes, I've infiltrated your workshop.
You sure have.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you guys pick Spitz Mouse anyway? Where did that come from?
Well, she's Mouse's sister, because 6 mil is about as small as you can get, so they're really cute, really tiny. So she's German and little and cute, so that's why we Mouse literally means.
Talk about mouse for a minute, and I'll see if I can get an image of Spitz mouse, because I don't have one ready yet. So you guys work away. Talk about mouse, sir, and I will.
There's one on their Instagram somewhere, way back, I think.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it was Struthers or if it was Rebecca's.
Yeah, it's a good job I'm not doing anything else, isn't it? Like,
but this that uprighting tool, you kind of modified that to do what to get the base made and all that, and it just came out wonderful and beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like it was just extra bits that I always think, what can I use it for? There must be something I can do.
They came in a box together, didn't they? From another garage floor.
From a shed floor, yeah. But yeah, I think sometimes I just look at, because we're always acquiring machines, and I just think, rather than it sit on the floor or just in a cupboard, there must be something it can do, even if it's just one job. And then I feel like the lathe is kind of, sounds a bit sad, but you know, living and doing something again in our workshop, no matter how mediocre. So yeah, we've ended up with a lot of machines that basically don't do that much on their own, which is fine.
I don't think that's sad at all. I think that's fantastic that you can repurpose old machinery that hasn't been that whenever it was the last time these machines were used, probably the owners thought they were never going to be used again. Like, you know,
Johnny, take that picture of the lathe off. That put us back on.
One moment. Okay.
I can't see anybody.
That's because there we go.
Hey.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to do some image editing here. Honest to goodness. Sorry, if I seem distracted, it's because I'm doing 5 other things at the same time.
So you two have come out of school together. You started from nothing, because the business part of this is what I like I find very fascinating. Everybody's story of how they got where they are and the struggles that they've had, and you know what is their DNA? You know, how did they end up where they end up? And you guys met, you met each other. You started from nothing, from just getting an old lathe and fixing it up, and you both had a dream to get somewhere, and you're still getting there, like we all are, right? We're never really at the end, no matter what. And you have a beautiful machine shop now. You've restored everything. You've put everything else behind you. You both retooled yourself. You have every degree known to mankind. Rebecca has every degree no one will ever get. Right? And I mean, I thought I had a messed up, past with degrees, but you got a ton on me, girl. So, but now you guys, you're kind of like me. For years you've been developing your own movement, but at the same time, for those who don't know what Rebecca and Craig do, besides restoration and the beautiful facility that they have and the location that they have, is they take vintage movements, they completely restore them. From the ground up, they get stripped down and meticulously restored, like an antiquarian would restore a movement. Not just let me fix your chronograph and get it working and take my money from you. I'm a watchmaker. This is full on restorations, as would be done if you went to Wo-Step school in Switzerland, where I went, or somewhere like that. I mean, the best, the top of the top. And then they repurpose that into a handmade gold or a case, and turn sometimes pocket watches into wristwatches. And the customer commissions per piece. And they've been doing this for a while, and they make masterpieces. They make guilloche dials for these timepieces, and they are literally works of art. They are one of a kind works of art, and I don't know anyone else that's doing anything like this, and they're representing their country. This is not in Switzerland where everything is easy to get. So they have some of the same struggles that I have here for sure. But at least, you're in a special building with some of the world's most famous goldsmiths and people who are doing guilloche. So if you could touch upon that before we get into your up and come, the 248 movement, I'd like to touch upon your facility, where it's located, and the speciality of the craftspeople that you have in your building that I think everyone should know more about, and how you work with other people.
Yeah, I mean, for us, working as kind of a collective of makers is really important to what we do. It's kind of us trying to replicate what was going on in the 17th and 18th centuries with watchmakers. Instead of this idea of a watchmaker being one person on their own, it's a watchmaker who used to work with a goldsmith down the road, and an enameler, and a chain maker, and a spring maker. And you bring together these different artisans who are all masters of their field, and you get something completely different. They each bring their own thing to the project. So it's always been really important for us to work with the very best engravers we can, and really kind of collaborate with them. It's not just commissioning someone to do something for you and you give them a bit and say, engrave this. It's kind of finding the people whose work that you really love and you're really excited by, and then letting them just do their own thing on it, because whatever they do is going to be amazing. So yeah, we're really lucky where we're based in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham, which is, well, it used to be the largest jewellery making centre in the world, then in Europe. I'm not sure it is anymore. But we still have a lot of people, a lot of skills around us. Not in watchmaking, unfortunately, but certainly people who can help us with things like enamelling and engraving. And yeah, where we are now in the Deacon Francis building.
Oh. And what about the guilloche? Who's doing the guilloche?
Deacon Francis. So that's our landlords at the moment. We were really fortunate in that we got a surprise introduction to the current generation of deacons, who they're 7th generation in the family now, and they've been based in this building for the past 230 odd years, making beautiful enamel jewellery. They've been enamelling on this site since the very beginning, and yeah, we're basically in their attic now making stuff, and our enamelers are in the basement downstairs. So we get to make stuff upstairs, bring it down to show them, and it really helps our process of enamel. There's hardly anyone doing enamel dials anymore. Like literally one other company we know of in the UK doing it. So having enamelers on site that we can literally go downstairs with a sketchbook and ideas and metal and show them designs and have that kind of interaction is just invaluable.
Yeah.
I think as a small, because we're such a small company, yeah, when you get to work with other people, some of the projects last for 6 months or up to 2 years or whatever. They become like another member of staff for like that period of time, sort of thing. So it's like every now and then we expand our company by 2 or 3 people, just to bring something different to what we do, and that's something that we really enjoy as well. I think it keeps it vibrant, and we can't do everything. I mean, I've tried engraving. There's no way I want to try and master that. That's very difficult.
Yeah, these guys have spent their whole lives, their whole careers mastering the art of something like engraving or enamelling. So like, we're watchmakers, that's what we do. We will never be that level of enameler compared to the people we work with, because there's just not enough years in your lifetime to achieve all that.
What about the engine turning or guilloche? Who is that also within the building that you're there?
It is. We've used people outside of the building, but I think again that's something we're always open to. If we see other people wherever they are in the world and we're impressed with their work and they want to do something with us, we're always, that's what we like to think, that we're open-minded, and there might be someone on the other side of the planet that wants to be a part of something we're making, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I try to say to people is, we are makers. We're watchmakers, and yes, we have to let other people who are speciality is in one thing their whole life. Either they're doing enameling or they're engine turning. That's like a lifelong process, sometimes taking 15 or 20 years just to get like a feel of, you know, what's going on and how these machines interact with themselves. And by doing it every single day, working on the same machine, let's say for engine turning. And I'm trying to convey to people that, you know, we already have 57 jobs that George Daniels listed in his books to be to make our own timepieces, especially the way you guys are doing, which is the traditional methods. And in modern day watchmaking, that goes even beyond that. If you're going to use CAD and CAM or, you know, basic CNC to at least make your main plates, something like that. So we have all these jobs. Now, if you're a collector interested in the pieces that we manufacture, which is art, we're not making watches. Let's be real here. We are making our own art. We really can't do everything. And why would you want us to dive into every area? If I'm not a case maker, right, and I don't enjoy case making, but my timepiece needs a case, then I should find someone who is a true artist that represents my brand to make my case. But I'm the designer of the case. I'm giving him my diagrams, be it pen to paper, or be it CAD or whatever it may be. We have to find these people to be, like you said, Rebecca, like the olden days, where we're just a big family of finding the right people that fit our art. And that works in my past industry, what I did previously as well, you know, in music. The only problem was back then for the music that we created, there was no roadmap because it was a new kind of music. So if we went to the record company and said we want get an artist to do our album cover, I mean, you should see the crap that they would send back. You know, it's like this guy with like cracked glasses, and it looked like it was like an album cover for like some pop band. You know, so they just didn't get it right. That wasn't our art. It didn't fit us, and more and more we would get more and more of that, and more we would do more and more. You know, we've been doing it ourselves up till now. It's, you know, the Grateful Dead way kind of way, you know, by the streets, you know, to represent who we are, what our art is, and not farm it out, because every time we farmed it out, it would be messed up. It wouldn't be us. So you guys are lucky. You've through the years found a few artisans that could work with you that represent what Struthers Watchmakers is, your passion, and you know what your timepieces are. And that's hard to find in America. You know, like good luck finding someone, you know, who can do a guilloche the proper way, you know. And I'm trying to represent my own country like you guys are. And it's not easy for all of us, is what the message I try to get off to the collectors, that each person that me and Johnny interview, they have their own way, their own art, their own way they work. We're all weird. We all have, you know, extreme OCD. We're off the charts. But that's what makes the end result. You know, when the collector is wearing a piece, he's wearing our story. He's wearing our blood, sometimes literally, all over those pieces. Yeah. Pretty much. So
how about having a look at
hand it over, but
sorry, Rebecca, I spoke over you. Could you repeat that?
Oh no, I was just saying the blood. We try to clean that off before we hand it over to the client.
Sure.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful red enamel dial.
It cleans off. It's just about a couple of people are asking to have a look at some of your watches. So we've got Carter and we have Kingsley. Which would you like to look at first and talk us through a little bit to show people what Struthers Watchmakers are actually doing in their own right as Struthers, as opposed to restorations or historic maintenance and things like that. So would you like to look at the Carter first, or?
Yeah, can do, yeah.
So here we go, folks. So
they're both recommissioned pieces, these, aren't they?
Yeah, basically the movements were victims of the what would you say?
Local bullion industry.
Yeah, the bullion industry.
Yeah.
Where they basically sometimes they cut through the case to get the gold and melt it down. Sometimes that involves cutting through the movement as well. Or a lot of the watches that might be gold, the movements are in such poor condition that the person is scrapping them because
too expensive to repair.
Yeah, so they end up I think there's now definitely been a change. A lot of these movements used to end up in the bin, in the bullion, bullion dinners, but now there seems to be a bit of, which is good in a way, a resurgence of people understanding the value of the movement on its own has some value, and people are collecting just, you know, well-known movements with a maker's name on it. So it's good in a way, but then it's still also, I mean, I know people have situations where they need money desperately, and that's fine, understandable. And you know, sometimes you can't rescue every watch from being scrapped.
Sure. But, what's the story behind the movement? What, like, how old is it? What's the origin of the movement? Or
it's about 1890.
E.F. Ashley.
E.F. Ashley was the original maker, London maker. We basically, the client was interested in having something in it which had a small nod to our 248 project. So we rebuilt the balance cock with a parachute shock setting. Obviously, we've stripped the plates and rebuilt it from the ground up again. But essentially, they wanted, you know, basically something that was
a nod to what we're doing ourselves, but within a recommission movement, because they really like that, which we found really interesting. Some people really, really value that idea of bringing something back to life that's already been around for 100 years.
Yeah,
And that's part of the history. It's almost like they are participating in the next phase of this watch's life, I suppose. And so that was,
yeah. I mean, the case, Rebecca made the swiveling pendant and bow.
Yeah, that was fun.
Which is, it looks easy. It's kind of.
Yeah, I promised to do it for the client, forgetting, because the actual bow itself, you can turn it a full 360, it spins. And that I quite like. I've always wanted to make one, so I used to use it in 18th century pocket watches. It was developed as a technique for anti-pickpocketing. Basically, pickpockets would stick their hand in your pocket, pinch the bow, and literally twist the watch off its bow and just take the watch away. So they developed these swiveling bows, so when they pinched and tried to twist it off, the bow would just keep spinning and they couldn't separate the watch from its bow. But of course, I promised this to the client before I remembered that all those watches were key wound and not keyless. But by that point, obviously, I'd already said I was going to do it, and I love a challenge, and I'm never dissuaded from that. So I had to figure out a way. Obviously, you've got the crown, you've got the winding stem running through the middle of that. You need to be able to take it in and out, and that bow needs to swivel both backwards and forwards in a full 360 without interrupting the movement of the crown. So that whole thing was kind of handmade, and having studied jewellery and silversmithing before really helped with that. That's really, yeah, it's good fun. And the engraving, we worked with a gun engraver who did both the dial and the movement at the back. She did both of those, and our parachute shock setting. So it's the first time that's a fully functioning parachute setting. There's no other shock setting underneath that. It is what it is, and that we reverse engineered from a really beautiful Swiss movement from the turn of the 19th century. So this was a similar sort of time to Breguet. Well, Breguet was around then, and would have been made a few years after he'd invented the parachute. So I don't know what relationship that watchmaker had with Breguet, but again, this movement had been scratched by bullion dealers and was destined for the bin. And we bought that in and got this original parachute shock setting, and thought, right, this is just beautiful. This is so much more beautiful than kind of pretty much any other shock setting there is. How can we rebuild this and create it again? So this was our first kind of, it's ended up being our trial for it. And yeah, our client was kind of testing it for us, and it's doing really well. The staff hasn't broken.
130 years old, the movement. And that's it's just absolutely spectacular. And so that's the Carter.
Wait, hold on a second. So put me on the screen for a second, Johnny. So what I want to explain to collectors and people that are watching, what Rebecca and Craig are talking about is the parachute shock setting is, in modern day watches, the balance wheel that goes back and forth all day long, be it maybe 18,000 vibrations an hour. If it takes a shock, if you smash your hand down on the table, it needs the pivots on the staff that holds that wheel are so thin that they bend, they break, because there is a jewel on the top and a jewel on the bottom, which is essentially bearings. Let's call them, if you want to think about it in a car engine or a wheel type setting. And if that balance wheel has a little play in it so it can spin, and if it takes a shock, that balance wheel comes down and hits the jewel, and it'll either break that little shaft or it'll mushroom it or bend it. And they needed to find a way for it to somehow have shocks. And nowadays we have KIF and all different kinds of companies that make little settings that drop in, and it's 2 jewels, and it's on a little spring that takes a little shock. This is 150 years ago, pre-Breguet, and it's something called a parachute shock. It's a long bent little lever with the jewel sitting on top of the top, flat jewel sitting on top, embedded in that piece of metal, and that metal, through the exact thickness that person determined, by filing it by hand in candlelight. There was no light back then, right? Right? Think about this, right? It's a trip, right? And we didn't have any of the tools we have today. He figured out a way for that pivot to take a shock, and it can rebound and bounce. And now those pivots won't break or mushroom unless it's a really bad shock, let's say. And Rebecca and Craig have taken this design from this watch that crossed their bench, and we'll talk about this in a little while. And they've incorporated that into their own movement, the 248 that they're working on now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So for those who don't know what a parachute shock is, now you do.
Well,
I hope I explained that okay. You guys have anything to add to that? Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. Well, I think you can see it there on the balance.
I wish we could put it's that whole black piece, everybody. So you can see it's screwed to the end of the balance cock, and it comes all the way around, and it's of course decorative. But at first, I'm sure the gentleman that was doing this one, he has to sit and file it, because if it's too thick, it's not gonna be a spring. And also the metal has to be heat treated and tempered to the perfect tempering for it to be a spring. So it's a very lengthy process, and then it has to be made to look ornate and beautiful in the end. So it's a lengthy process for collectors that look at what Rebecca and Craig do, and what we all do as real traditionally trained watchmakers. It's not about, oh, well, that looks really nice. It's a nice piece. What do you do? Just file that out and cut it? No, just that one piece it could take weeks and months for you to reproduce or produce. But we want you to think about the history and the gentleman who sat in his own bed at night thinking, how can I make a shock out of a miniaturized jewel, to protect these timepieces. And it's come all that way now. And now we're reversed. It's still, there's nothing really better, right, Rebecca and Craig, right? We can buy a KIF, but it's not going to do the job any better than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not changing, reinventing the wheel or anything. It's looking backwards. We are looking backwards, but I just like it. And I just thought it'd be a fun thing to put into an English movement and make it look as though it's already, as if it was already there. Like as if it was never looked any different. Which that was the challenge, to try and make it look like it was meant to be there.
It's there's a bit of a legacy thing, I think, with us and these sort of projects, especially with the really historic movements. We did another one a while ago with Victor Kullberg movement, who was a Swedish watchmaker, master watchmaker, incredibly famous in his day, ended up working in London at a similar time to E.F. Ashley. And it's that kind of we regularly ask ourselves, what would the watchmaker think if he could see what we were doing now? So if he knew his movement had been scrapped and was going to be thrown away, and then these two guys working in Birmingham in the UK get a hold of it and start pulling it apart and doing their own thing to it, what would they actually make of it? Would they cry, or would they approve of it? We do. The things we make are cast in metal, and they will outlive us for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it gets us thinking about, with the movements that we're going to make, that what's going to happen in hundreds of years' time, and how will we feel if someone does this to one of our movements? It's
actually
you're custodians of something, really.
Yeah, on the card that we signed underneath the bridge with the original watchmaker's name, just out of courtesy, respect. And on the Kullberg, we remade the top plate and kept the original plate in a secret compartment in the case that came with the watch. So it's not like trying to pretend it's we've made it. Essentially, it's about respecting the past and moving forward with it and turning it into something nice again.
I think what you said is absolutely correct. I think, way back when, if it was EBOSH type movements and it was assembly for a main manufacturer, that's one thing. But for someone with low production, like what you guys are doing now with 248, that's a piece of us. So yeah, to see 150 years later that come across another watchmaker's bench and bring it back to life. I mean, I've done that, and I'm sure you guys do it a lot as well. I've had people come into my restoration place when I own my facilities, and nobody could repair their thing. It's been to 10 watchmakers, and one guy says the other guy sucks, the other guy says the other guy sucks, and it's just a big mess. So I put it. It's been in my safe for 30 years, and which was my great grandfather's, and if they drop it on the right desk like you guys, we know we're going to be able to fix it. It's just a matter if they can afford our time, because it's usually very lengthy, fixing all the other watchmakers' crap most of the time. But when we do bring it back to life, I've had people in front of me plenty of times hysterically burst out crying, like emotionally, like you don't understand the memories I'm having right now of my grandfather walking on my porch holding this watch when I was 8 and teaching me how to ride a bicycle for the first time. I just remember the gleam of that watch. I can't believe them, and they're hysterical. And that when I used to get that it would freak me out at first. I'm like, it's a little bit off, But then I say, wait a minute, I'm a lot of it off, But then that's the gratification where I said, this is such. It's not a job. It's just like I don't even know what to say. It's just I'm toast for the rest of the day, usually emotionally. But that's it. That's the pinnacle of why I do what I do, is to bring something back to life and give love to somebody else. And that's basically what we do as true watchmakers. That's what we do. It's beyond art, absolutely.
Yeah. Dan, you mentioned earlier on there about the project 248, and I'd like to take a little look at that, if that was okay. It is your first fully in-house movement, but it's conventional. It's you're using an English lever escapement that had essentially been discarded or moved to one side over 100 years ago, but using a combination of that old technology and modern machinery and well, not saying machinery. You can take us through it anyway, but I have one pretty close up of it there. So that's cased up. That looks like we're not too far away from seeing it. How's it getting on?
Yeah, that's a very early prototype now, that one, isn't it?
I think that's about 2.5 years old?
Yeah, thereabouts. Wow. That's the parachute shock setting.
So quite a lot has changed since then. I mean, that was us in our traditional way of mocking up prototypes out of bits of stuff in our workshop to kind of, one, try and get an idea, because we don't do CAD, it's a way of trying to see what it might look like, and two, to see if anyone would be interested, because you kind of need it helps if you have funding to move it forward.
Sure. So that's actually pretty much out of date, that image there. I had been looking through the Dropbox today, and I don't so I think that's right.
Well, that watch ended up being completely taken apart to kind of start engineering more bits of it and use that, progress the prototype even further. So the majority of our photos now, this is a problem that we have, because as soon as we finish something, it goes out and we never have anything to show people. But with this project, it's such an ongoing project, and because we're making it from scratch and because we've never made it before, when people ask to see pictures of it, it's basically just pictures of pieces. So we've got that first one together and running. It's just a lot of photographs of pieces, and they're looking very lovely now, pieces, and it's actually looking like a real running watch at this stage. So it's getting very exciting now.
Fantastic.
Well, the idea was to do 5. And I thought that it doesn't make it any easier to make. I used to think if you make more than one, it makes it easier, but in a weird way, because of the machines we're using.
Yeah, they're so coach built, aren't they?
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of unique anyway.
So it's kind of what essentially in bits looks like 5 separate abouches, and they look identical, but I've, in the traditional way, when I've stripped down old English movements and noticed that the plates are numbered to match the other plate. Obviously, we're doing the same thing because I'm hand finishing, even though it looks exactly the same, because of the way the screws line up and the way the plate sits in the inside the main plate and the gap around the edge. Everything is filed to fit each individual watch. So I suppose in a way I really like that, because it reminds me of when I'm working on old items that, you know, you might think, I've got one of those movements, and you realize that you can't just put that part into that movement because it's, you know, it needs re-engineering because it's very slightly out in a way. So that might sound terrible to some people, but for us it's cool because each watch is individual in itself, and I kind of like that, the fact that you can't just swap the bits around.
Well, each timepiece becomes its own masterpiece, and I think you guys are finding out now. You know, we've all seen it as restoration people, because I've done years and endless years of restoration, like you guys, that we've had watches like that come across our bench all the time. But it's really cool because first we're cursing at it, going, "This don't fit. Why, you know, who messed this up and what?" But it's really not. It's each timepiece is its own. Like you said, you can't just swap a bridge like on a Hamilton, and because they were doing things in such huge series that they was, you know, they had the money to take. It's kind of like old school CNC. They would make one machine do one thing. All that did was you put the balance cock on and it drilled a hole straight through to the plate and aligned that. That's what that person did all day, every day, and they just did them by the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds every day. That's not, you know, true watchmaking of the masterpieces that come across our bench. It's impossible to have that repeatability, which is, I talk a lot about that when I interview people, but that we can have in modernization of watchmaking. You know, going back to the jig borer, even though we still have that diagram, it still is going to turn out a little bit different every single time. Even if we're sitting on a Hauser, it's almost close, you know, but it's going to be off unless it's, you know, you spend 2 years in CAD and CAM and with your CNC machine just to get a main plate right. You know, then you can have repeatability, you know, but that's really not, kind of like, it's a whole different ball game, and that's not really. There's different levels of that as well. Is it a prototype kind of CNC machine, or is it, you know, are you looking to, you know, mass manufacture? But yeah, everyone becomes its own little baby, and I think that's what collectors want from us as independent watchmakers, and we need to touch on that a little bit too, because we're true. You guys are true independent watchmakers. We're struggling along. If you've been following along here so far, you're hearing it's not easy for any of us, no matter what. Even when we get watches commissioned, Rebecca and Craig, they have an incredible movement we're going to keep showing you some more pictures of that they've been working on for years, with their own ideas based upon the best of the best that's come across their bench, meaning the escapement they want to use in their timepiece and the shock system they want to use in their timepiece. It's all because of what they found to be and represent themselves as the best for what they and their art is. And that's what sets apart all us independents, because we're all different. We all have, maybe I'm a complication guy, so I saw a lot of different things that I want to put in my timepiece, and Rebecca and Craig have seen more pocket watches than me, so they're more adept to that, and they fall in love with certain ornate things that are built into pocket watches. All of us in independence are a little bit different, and that's what's so fascinating and wonderful about us, because as a collector, if someone's watching, you get to choose whatever mood you're in. This year you might be in this mood. 2 years from now you might be in that mood. It's not about swapping watches and which one is better, because it truly is art from our bench and art from us. You're getting a piece of us and our story, and it's just a wonderful thing. So let's talk more about that. Like the 248, I know I see on your Instagram that you guys have 4 or 5 plates already, main plates already made, and some have been commissioned already. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, those that are in production, and let people know that this takes a long time. Like me, I'm here 3.5 years every day, all day. It doesn't stop, you know. And I know you guys are the same way. So if you could touch upon a little, let people know how hard it is. It's not easy, and that they should, you know, go to the bank and give you some more money and commission some more watches.
That's when it gets scary. But I was going to say the drawing that we have of 248 is probably the most up to date in a way. So we did the drawing when we kind of, after we got that point of making that first prototype, and we got a first bit of interest and developed this plan to make 5. We went back to the drawing board then to really kind of nail down exactly what it was we wanted to get out of this project.
Yeah.
And we've now all 5 are on order. So that's it for the first run. And
great. Congratulations.
Yeah. So we're thinking of kind of carrying on in maybe like runs of 5 and just sticking at something like that, but introducing something different in each one to kind of separate them into their little families almost. So,
it's a really simple watch, but like you said, the reason it's so simple is because I had an inclination from, as a restorer, how long this project could take and how many hours you have to put into it, and as you making jigs. I mean, it's endless making jigs or making tools or for me, making tools to measure something to help my old machines cope with making something accurate. And it's just an endless cycle of making bits that aren't even the watch. You know what I mean? Just to
there's no textbooks either that literally give you the A to Z of this is how you make a watch. There's some brilliant reference books out there, like Daniel's Watchmaking is amazing. It's a fantastic, we refer to it regularly, but once you actually get going, there's a lot he leaves out there for you to kind of find your own way through and find your own style and find your own techniques. And especially when you're going back and doing something like an English lever escapement that hasn't been done in sort of over 100 years, you're having to try and like find your way back to doing things that used to be passed on generationally from master to apprentice, but have now missed 100 years. And this is where we're kind of trying to use a little bit of modern technology and certainly modern materials to improve on what had been done previously, and find our way through. So yeah, I mean, that's a challenge, but it's a good fun challenge.
Nothing too groundbreaking. But
you know, that's because all the old, you know, the old inventions were the great inventions. I mean, just like you guys, you know, I'm using, you know, and bringing back the Libra eccentric escapement, which is somewhat based on the lever as well, which I think is way better escapement than what's out there. So yeah, it's a challenge. You know, how can we get it to work? How can we make what they designed back then out of maybe a somewhat better material? But that's about it, really. There's really nothing to change. They had it right back then. Well, for me, it's to miniaturize it from pocket watch size, you know, down to wristwatch size. That's greatly difficult, and have longevity and all the good things that come along with that escapement. But also, for me and my timepiece, it was about how am I going to make an escape wheel in-house, you know? And the lever escapement enables us to do that. And for an independent watchmaker, that's why my project here with Arts Mechanics and with Cyril Brevet-Naudot on this escapement is open source. All the drawings, all the CAD drawings, it's a new way for watchmaking. We somewhat share things, but this is strictly, it's open source. You can get the CAD files if you're a watchmaker to utilize this escapement and not go through for them it was 3.5 years of research and development, and for me it's another 3 years on top of that to make my version of it. So you can kind of get ahead and sharing watchmaking, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely.
And spreading independence. All of us should be able to have that independence and not have to buy an escape wheel from somebody, and they're sitting there dangling a carrot going, what are you going to give me? Well, you got to buy 3,000 of these. And we can't afford that. It's not cool.
There's something really satisfying about having like a little tray and all the bits in it. You've made the parts, and it's kind of, it's nice to think that you haven't had to go and buy them. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's kind of satisfying to think it's sort of.
You never have to deal with the red tape. You're never going to have to deal with the red tape of parts supply in 20 years' time if something goes wrong and it needs servicing or repairing. That's quite nice. We don't need a contract with anyone to get hold of spares.
Yeah.
Tempting.
Yeah, you guys got a contract.
Yeah, well, you computer without me. So
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I hear you on that. That's what I'm telling people. Well, here in America, it's even harder to get the materials that you guys can get, like German silver or the right steel, right? I mean, like I just finished up my balance bridge that I showed. It's cut away here. Just to get the right steel to be able to make this. This is a one-piece balance bridge with the legs and the feet all in one. Just to get the proper steel in this country, it's impossible. It's like they tell you it doesn't exist. We don't make that, And
Wow.
I know they do make it because my other watchmaker friends in Switzerland are buying it and using it, So it's a very difficult process here in America to get the right brass, the right everything I need, just the core elements to make what we need out of the proper metallurgies. Are you guys finding that same thing in Britain? I mean, I've been to your hometown, obviously, many times to play in the arena there. So it seems like you have a huge. In the past, you have a huge industry there, but we had that here too, right? We had Hamilton and Elgin and all that, but not anymore. So, are you finding that same the same problem over there?
No, it's kind of. There seems to be. I think the only problem is sometimes because of the amount we order, that can be a problem because people expect to turn up in a truck.
We look at other industries. We have other industries to because there's nothing really to support watchmaking specifically. But what Craig was saying about order quantities, that we found the type of spring steel that we really needed that's actually used for the parachute shock setting that's in the Carter. So this is the one in the photograph. The right spring steel we could find was supplied by a company from Sheffield. It's Sheffield Steel. And when we phoned them up to ask them what their minimum order is, they were like, working in tons because that normally supply the shipping industry, and we were like, okay, I don't know, we're gonna need that much. And they actually got an offcut from the factory floor and just sent it to us for free. They just found us comical, I think. But so we find stuff like that, and Formula One type materials, some of the metals they're using as well. But again, it's all through kind of larger metal companies that we have to beg to send us.
The medical industry and a lot of the car tuning industry, and there are some old school the model engineering community. There's some old school suppliers that are still supplying alloys and nickel, silver, and things like that, in sheet and bar and things like that. And so far, touch wood, it's been okay. But people have said to me, you need to start buying it up in quantities because it won't be around forever.
Those are workshops that are creating still manufacturing those old metals and materials, probably to keep because in the UK there's a strong enthusiast culture of preserving old steam engines or preserving old cars or airplanes or old racing cars. You've got that as well. You've got as you mentioned, Formula One, and you cast me back to like of Graham Chapman or Frank Williams, who are referred to as garagists, who would make their own components for their cars, or they would do what you're doing as well and use the local community of small engineering firms to source those components, which made them ultimately the cars to beat. Back in the 60s and the 70s.
But how are you guys? I know we have to make a lot of jigs, like Craig was saying, out of larger materials, and I don't see like you guys don't have like a Shaolin 102 or anything of that size that I can see in your workshop. Craig, how are you getting the larger material down to the size that you would need to turn on your Pultra or to hold little parts and jigs and make jigs like that?
That's a really good question. One of the things I realised from trying to keep a workshop clean quite a few years ago was making jigs is incredibly messy, and you just end up with, apart from how long it takes from you start with a massive piece of brass, and it takes ages, especially on a little 10 mil or whatever. And me and Rebecca sort of decided we should have a look in the quarter and see if there's any little engineering companies that could literally do that part of the work. And so we end up with walking around a big pile of swarf every day. So we found, I mean, like you said, it's not, these type of companies don't exist anymore. So, or not as much. We found a little old school engineering company. Their workshop's amazing. They've got, I mean, everything's, it's like ours, but everything's sort of 5 times bigger. But I can take them a drawing, a bit of brass, and say, could you just cut me off 4, you know, coins of brass? So then I can just take that to my workshop, put that in my 8 mil, and turn it into my little jig and things like that. But it saves time and a lot of mess, and I don't have to go and buy a bigger lathe.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to do it for sure. That's kind of the way I started here. I did end up kind of caving into a 102 because I wanted to set that up actually for gear cutting, but I really don't use that for that either. I try to find someone that'll do it, but here it's so difficult. Same thing, the guy's too busy. He's making 500 of these for somebody else and 2,000 of those for someone else, and I only work on CNC, so you got to pay me to draw it, even though I can do the programming for him. He's got a different machine. He won't accept, my cam. It's just a lengthy process. So to find someone that's like us, old school with old lathes somewhere else to cut it down, that is the way. So we got to search and seizure those people, because I'm in agreement with you on that part, Craig. It's way better if we can do that. It streamlines it. If we could just have a box of pieces of brass, okay, we know this is for this jig and this box. It's money well spent if you can find that person. If you
need contacts, let us know. We curated an exhibition about them a couple of years ago, a photography exhibition. We worked with a very good friend of ours, Andy Pillsbury, who's a brilliant photographer, and he went out to some of these workshops, including Bevan, who do our kind of blanking outfit tools and jigs, and captured them in their workshops, because a lot of these guys, their factories have been around for a very long time, and some of them you don't know how much longer they're going to be there. So it's kind of our way of
we did there's an exhibition called We're Still Here.
Yeah.
And anyone in the jewelry quarter who we've worked with, even something could be simple, whatever, working with another silversmith or
the chain maker.
We got we found a guy who could still hand make pocket watch chains for the Carter.
So they're all machine done now, really, and he's we think
does it the old school way?
Yeah, the last hand chain maker left in the jewelry quarter, and one of the last in the UK, because everything else is just machine made. But he was the last person to apprentice at his factory, and now he's
60 odd.
It was his 70th birthday.
Oh, 70 odd.
So just capturing these people, because they are incredible, and we are lucky as we are, and we need to use them now, because as you say, when they're gone, I don't know what we'll do. So we need to get them part off loads of bits of brass for us now.
Yeah. No, but I thought if we did a little exhibition just to say thank you. But people came and saw all the pictures of them and thought, because they don't see what goes on behind these closed doors in these old buildings. And a lot of these buildings have been, as you probably know,
that's something else, so don't worry about it. You have an idea.
With the redevelopment of lots of areas now, the factories are going and there's more apartments. And we thought now's the time to sort of capture these people in their workshops and have a little exhibition, get people just to say, like, thanks for helping us, and get other people to realise that there's people here making these things, and hopefully they could get some more work from
and some apprentices in to take over.
Which you guys,
you bring up the question of these the people who are making these parts for you, and you say that gentleman's 70 recently. What about the next generation? Because what you're doing now is rekindling an awareness and rekindling an actual part, a piece of living history, if you like, to go to keep that flame alive of English watchmaking. So what happens in another 10 years' time when those people are maybe, hopefully they're retired, but probably we don't live forever, So
I don't think we'll ever retire. We all work to the grave. That's Yeah.
No,
Sorry.
so no, I was going to say it's a good question. Most of the people in the quarter that we know through working there are sort of at that age, and a lot of them are now just one-man bands or working on their own, and it kind of goes with them. And some of them are the last sort of silversmiths, and I mean, I'm a bit obviously I've got friendly with them, and they've helped me with problems I've had, with case making and things like that, and all sorts of different reasons, and they've been a great help. But the next generation probably won't have people they can ask to who are actually still doing those practices of making joints or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I suppose machines and technology will be able to do it, but I don't know.
Yeah, mind you, because I think that's part of what we're about here down in the metal, is to try and to raise awareness to these old skills, these old trades and professions that are all part and parcel of the watchmaking industry, that hub of manufacturing, of engineering and production and finishing, or whether it's just, as you mentioned there, if it's joints or hinges or things they got there that are, or sorry, I meant the chains and things, get the chain makers that are dying arts. It'd be terrible if really in another 10 years that was the end of that. And
well, I think the birth of this era of independent watchmaking, what we are, like Rebecca and Craig and myself and some of the other people we speak about here and speak to here, is that's what we are. We try to give back. I know Rebecca and Craig have an apprentice that works with them, so they're sharing their knowledge. That's what this show is about, is showing the struggles of the people we talk to, and that we don't lose this, and that the collectors that are purchasing our art we're letting them know face to face here that it is true art. Where Rebecca and Craig, their plans is to make 5 pieces. That's a lot. My plans here, if I can make 3 a year, even which I'm a one-man show. I'm not even married or have someone else I could yell at, I can yell at the machine. That's it. You suck. It's your fault. That's about it. So that's what you get. That's what you get. That's what independent watchmaking is now. It's not, I want to be independent. I want to make 300 watches a year. And, if that's your gig, that's really not what this true independent watchmaking is, I think. Right now, we have different plateaus, right, Johnny? Like we have the MB&Fs and all that, but that's really not, it's a different. It's independently owned, supposedly, kind of things like. I'm not picking them out, but there's other massive brands like that, and it really is a brand of independent watchmaking. But when it filters down to true art and 1 or 2 person craftsmanship that collectors want, they have to pick someone that loves their story, loves their survival skills, because that's what it was. Rebecca and Craig, started with, restoring one little lathe coming out of school. And, they have a beautiful, beautiful place now, and they're giving back. They have an apprentice sitting there. So when you purchase a piece from them, whatever it may be, or even, give a watch in to be restored and brought back to life, you're actually helping. Forget about Rebecca and Craig. The apprentice that's sitting there is getting schooling that she couldn't get. She's being passed down something that hopefully she does the same thing to someone else, and representing their country, which is outside of Switzerland, is rare, right, guys? I mean, you're representing your country, and you made a very good stamp, and you're everywhere. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see. As all the rest of the independents looking at you, I want you to know, we all see you. We are thankful for, I know, because every time I say this to someone we interview, they say, I didn't know that you guys love me so much. But true, I didn't know you saw that, but we do. It really is an impact, and it's an impact when I talk to other collectors. They see it, and it's a beautiful thing to watch,
We're just surprised when people have actually heard of us.
See? There it is again, Johnny.
Like, does anyone know we're in here?
That's what this is about, though. That is what we're about, Rebecca and Craig, is to make people aware of it. Like, you know, in the metal is something that is to showcase independent watchmaking, because we're not talking to people from the bigger brands, the mainstream brands for sure. But we want to shine a light and let people know that you guys are out there. You are, as I used the word a few minutes ago, the garagistes. These are that make everything as far as possible in-house. And so if this helps let people know that you're out there, fantastic. And your webinar last night, which I think we should also talk about, we probably won't get a chance to talk about it this evening, because we've already gone, as usual, way over the hour mark. We have a few questions from people who have been watching for the last 80 minutes or so, and
we have to ask the music question too.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about music or anything yet, man.
We want to know. First of all, do you play music?
Go there first.
Do you play music in your shop? Does it bother your dog? Does dog hair get in the watch? No. What did you guys?
It's not allowed in the workshop, and we have we're big music fans, and we still buy vinyl, obviously, being old school.
But we also get on in that we like the same music, so that's another fortunate thing.
Yeah.
And what is that? What kind of music did you guys grow up with? And
varied. Maybe not quite as heavy as your sound, Dan. But,
yeah, I mean, well, there's a little bit of an age gap between. There's just a small one, and I think I was kind of discovering music as Craig was out clubbing and going to gigs and stuff. So I kind of emerged on that Britpop scene, where you were going out and seeing bands like Blur and Radiohead and stuff, and I couldn't get in at 13. So yeah, so it's kind of through that, and now a lot of jazz, funk, soul. I'm quite into
some light rock.
Yeah.
What's the big the amphitheater there in the center of Birmingham?
You've got the indoor arena.
Mm-hmm.
Could be. There's a few. There's the NIA, the NEC.
NEC, that's it.
Yeah, the NEC is the biggest you can get.
That's where I used to play all the time. That's a great place. That's a killer place.
Yeah.
Nuts. Yeah. Crazy people there.
Yeah.
So do you guys play music in the shop while you work?
We have the radio on, don't we?
So basically, we got quite lazy and listened to 6 music a lot, because it basically plays every sort of all the records I've bought and sold through my life. It plays everything and new music as well. So I kind of like it for that, really. There's a good mixture of there's every sort of style of music on there.
Yeah, a lot of new music as well. So it's a really good way to find stuff when you're working, to have things on. And then you've got bench paper and a pen there, so you think, oh, that's right, I'm taking note down that. Get that later. Yeah.
And that's cool. All right, so you got music playing, right? That's cool, Johnny. And listen, I want to say again to people who, if you're still here, that Rebecca and Craig have said already, they do not even use CAD, right? They're still, I don't know if you found that picture, Johnny. They're still like drawing, which I still do, even though I took a year of my life to learn CAD and CAM. They're still drawing not just the look of the watches, but they're all the dimensions. If they have to make whatever it is, if it's a bridge for a watch or whatever it is, they're literally putting pen to paper the way we're trained in watchmaking school and reading off that. You can see that in the bottom figures there, the bottom left quadrant of that picture there. They're still doing it old school way. And if you're buying a piece or commissioning a piece from them, that's what you're getting. You're getting true art and artisans at work, the way it was done before we had light, before we had cars, before that's when a lot of their machines that they're using and utilizing were made. If you really think about it, it's kind of wacky and crazy, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. Hey, I think we've had a number of questions here that have been coming in over the last hour and a half or so, and I thought it would be, people give us the time to come and listen to us. So there's a question from Simon Ford, friend of ours, friend of Scottish Watches. What's the favorite watch you've done yourselves, and which is the one that you wish you'd done? That could take half an hour. So if you want,
yeah, that's
I don't think we've made our favourite watch yet.
no.
And then restoring.
Every time we get a new restoration in, we're always like, "That's my favourite watch." It could be anything from. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of. Well, if you look at the early Cartier, when it was more like the handmade cases and the
American watching clock movements.
Yeah. I love that period. Early Patek. I love early Patek. I've worked on. I should probably say this really, but a lot of modern watches.
The materials aren't the same generally. Brands, no brand.
Well, I can't see the relation between the modern watch and the one from the 20s and 30s. It's almost like something. I suppose in a weird way, the watch is now perfect, but that's not what I like. I like the old one. That's
Me too.
it's down to manufacturing processes. I assume that everything's gone teched up, everything's more efficient. There's less waste. So it's gone to.
Well, I'm the same way because I started very young. So my favorite. My specialty was restoring Pateks, and I did a lot of the smallest woman's watch ever made at one time was the American watch and clock. So I used to do a lot of those just because it was very painful. I think it was the challenge. I don't know, but I specialized in that for a while. And you're absolutely right. Even though the early Rolex movements that weren't made by Rolex, it's the metal. Like you look at it and it's different than German silver. I mean, I don't even know what it is. And they're built, like Craig was saying earlier, like everyone's just a little bit different, even if they are somewhat mass produced. And now, because of mass production, everything started getting, how skinny can we make a nameplate before it breaks, but it'll still last a little while. Whereas in the past, they had that attitude like we had here after World War II in America, like we're going to build everything like a brick shithouse, basically, so it lasts, 500 years. If you buy that old, here we have those old green L&R watchmaking cleaning machines. I'm sure you've seen them somewhere, but I mean, they were built in New Jersey, right? I lived not too far from there in Rockland County, New York, when I grew up. And I used to go to their factory and bring them some of the ones I would find. I needed pieces, and they were already making the Tempo 400 and all these automated ones. And I bring it to them. I'm like, why don't you guys just make this? It's like 12 pieces. And he goes, and that's the reason we stopped making it. He said they were over-engineered and they don't break. So we had to make something that would break and make us money. And that's where we're at.
Just dealing with a little cat situation there. We've got behaving so well.
Yeah, I think, like you said, early Rebirth Rolex trench watches.
You specialise in Craig weirdly specialises in those pre-Rolex Rebirths.
Well, I don't specialise in them. I think I just got a sick sense of humour that I like working on them.
He used to job he had as a restorer, and your boss did call you sick.
Yeah,
and I think you have got to be a little bit, because on the rare occasion we do service a modern watch, and we'll always be like, we'll take it apart and put it back together. You put it on the timing machine, and it's just flawless. Yeah. And we're like, oh, that's boring. it's just fine. It just works. There's no.
Boring might be the wrong word. That's the dream.
Well,
there's no humanness in it,
Yeah. But there is something so and soulful about the old ones, that they are real characters, and you do need to fight with them to get them to work sometimes. But it feels that way.
Yeah, but they're overbuilt. Right, Craig? You take a wheel out of one of those old Rolexes, right? It's like it's like 10 times thicker than it really actually needs to be. But you're looking at it. I mean, you could take it on your bench and just you just kind of just drop it. You're not even worried, right? The new one, it just looks like it's stamped like it's just junk.
Yeah, they're old tractors, aren't they?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but it's the same as the tools that you're using. And there is that common saying that if you have something in the house, an old machine, or if it's a washing machine or a sewing machine or something like that, the common thing is that you don't. when you buy a new one, they don't make them like that anymore.
No, I mean, look, I'm my caliber, right? I'm holding this up. I can squeeze this as hard as I want. This thing, it's never going to go anywhere. It's going to be around 1,000 years from now. It's a pocket watch on your wrist. That's what I'm making because I know what lasts. I know what's come across my bench, you know?
Yeah.
And if it should be this thick, I want it that thick, you know?
Yeah.
So
if you've made it, you know it can be made again. Because that's it, with the more modern calibers, they'll work and work and work until they break, and then that's it. And trying to get spare parts for a lot of those, especially with some of the kind of more innovative techie stuff, when those brands stop making those spare parts, or you can't hand make another one. So that's the whole watch.
That's what I think. Yeah. I've been trying to convey that to the collectors, you know, who, you know, they want another one of those name brand kind of watches, but they really don't know what's deep down inside. And I keep trying to tell them exactly what you just said, that they only got to make parts for 20 years and give you those parts. After that, it's not like the timepieces like pocket watches or the early 19th century, 20th century watches where we can hit, you know, our machines here, our old Shaoblins or what they be, and make new gears for you and new pinions. It's not going to be possible. Your watches are going to be garbage. Literal, you went from an $80,000 or $90,000 timepiece, and you're literally going to have to throw it away because we can't fix it. Not even Craig or Rebecca. We can't. We can't make a wheel that shitty. Is the bottom line.
For sure. Listen, guys, we are over the 90-minute mark, and again, we are bloody useless at getting credits into an hour down. Really, what are we like, man? Come on, you know. So,
we got interesting people. That's why.
Absolutely. And to know something, as we're going on through the different episodes, we tend to be hitting that 90-minute mark, and I have no problem with that. I think it's fantastic. It is what it is. So, you know, whether you watch us or whether you listen to us, it's always fascinating. We don't have any shows that there aren't real interesting points in it throughout. So, what I wanted to say, first of all, to Craig and Rebecca, whenever we sign off, don't go anywhere. You stay there for a moment or two. And so what I wanted to say from myself anyway, to thank you so much for joining us and making this such a fantastic episode. We only touched, like, I have so many overlay images there that we didn't even get looking at yet. And so maybe sometime, and I'll tell you what, whenever Project 248 gets to that stage, let's do this again. And we'll go over, and I sure I will be improving. I must improve with experience here, you know, so I'll be better at it the next time. So, so from me anyway, thanks a million. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, same thing here. I just want to thank you two. I know it's getting a little bit late there, and I just want to thank you for, you know, representing your country. There's very few of us who really hold that flame of traditional watchmaking or traditionally trained. You guys go way beyond that. You're case makers. I mean, I wish I could sit here and turn a gold case. It's just never going to happen. And such an incredible team of a husband and wife team. I mean, we don't see that anywhere. And I think everyone needs to pay attention to both of you and the art that you create, because it's true art. It's manufactured traditionally with blood, sweat, and tears and painful love. And that love you're going to give to somebody every time you strap one of your pieces onto their wrist. So keep going, keep moving. You know, I can't wait for the pandemic to be gone, so I can travel a little bit and come and infiltrate your beautiful shop and see Spitz mouse.
Yay! Yeah, many times. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much. It's very kind.
An absolute pleasure. So for everyone, I want to apologize to the people like Shane Snyder and Captain Forrest, who had some fantastic questions. We didn't get around to them tonight. We will do our best always to get through our questions. And thank you everyone for joining us for another fantastic episode of In the Metal, the heavy metal world of independent watchmaking. And so we hope that you will join us again next week, and we really look forward to seeing you all this time again next week. So thank you very much for joining us.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.